Nurses of Reddit. What's the most entertaining thing someone has said coming off of anesthesia? Female patient after C-section asking me how many chickens she had. Because she had beef with pig. Her husband translated later. How much the baby weighed. Because I have a bet with hubby. A15 Yo was waking up and talking more. And trying to get out of bed before he was ready. Bud. Where are you going? I've got to go to my locker. Buddy. You're in the hospital. You can't go to your locker right now. So where are you trying to go? Serious expression. The future. A man asked me if his body parts still belong to him and I still think about it LMAO. I work in the OR. Funniest was a guy quickly sat straight up after extubation. We're all standing around him making sure he doesn't try to jump off the table. He looks at me and then slowly gives me double finger guns. Turns his head to another staff member and slowly gives them finger guns. Didn't say a word. Just finger guns. A lot of people wake up really crazy, they start swinging or just get really restless on a narrow OR bed. It's nice when people wake up sleepy and I'll just bundle them up with blankies and roll out. My wife is a dentist. One of her patients started moaning loudly. Not the typical moans and groans. I mean like the really good sex moaning. It was loud enough that half the clinic heard. Including the waiting area. We had to slide board a patient from the stretcher to his bed after an endoscopy. You put a board between bed and stretcher and then grab patient and slide them over to bed with sheet underneath them. My patient screamed, "Wee," and then proceeded to tell us that these are the best drugs ever and that it felt like the 60s again. Tech here. We often do conscious sedations with ketamine to realign broken bones. I had a 10-year-old girl who snapped her arm on the trampoline. When she was coming out of the ketamine slumber, she asked why she saw God. Little freaky. She also snarfed down 4 PB&J sandwiches after and I was impressed. The best has to be the sledding accident kid who snapped his tibia. When he was coming out of the ketamine sleep, he kept begging us not to tell his mom he smoked weed for the first time the day before. His mom was in the room while this was taking place. When I got my wisdom teeth out, the nurse was trying to wake me up and said, "Okay, it's time to open your eyes. Can you open your eyes for me?" I said, "Say please." She said please very nicely. And I opened my mouth as wide as I could. Woke up thinking I'd had sex with my doctor. And apologized to him for how bad it was. Guy wakes up in the recovery room after left knee replacement surgery and starts talking with his wife. "Well, at least I still have 2 good knees." "Oh honey," she replied. "You just had knee surg." He interrupts in a loud voice. "My right knee and my weenie." When I was in high school I was just getting put under and feeling loopy for a wisdom teeth operation and the nurse was making small talk with me and told me she graduated from the same high school I went to and was on the dance team and I told her, "No you weren't. You have to be pretty to be on the dance team." Right before blacking out. I think about this sometimes before I go to sleep at night. Nurse, I am so sorry to do you like that when you were just doing your job. A friend of mine woke up after surgery and stated, "I want to eat a Christmas tree." I had a male patient who as he woke up mumbled, "I'm not pregnant." Not a nurse but I had dental surgery at a hospital in Bangkok a few years ago. I had pretty much come out of anesthesia and was just waiting for the doctor and discharge stuff. There was this giant Aussie guy also in recovery and he kept trying to sneak away. Like he'd look around, grab his IV pole, and tiptoe toward the exit. The nurses were just kind of herding him around the room back to his bed. Then he'd do the same thing again. The nurse with me asked if I wanted the curtains closed and I was like hell no. I just had major oral surgery and this is funny. So she and I sat there for nearly 20 minutes watching his shenanigans. Nurses have patience like saints. I swear. My brother got his wisdom teeth out not too long ago. When he woke up, he started laughing a lot. Like he wasn't laughing super hard. But he was laughing for super long and it almost sounded monotone. After a couple minutes of just flatline laughter, he stopped and mumbled chicken. Like it's what he was laughing at. Don't know why but it stopped him from laughing for a bit. Did a short stint in recovery as part of my graduate program. I got proposed to a couple of times. Same guy would walk past me in the corridor a day later and not recognize me. I once told the nurses to stop. I wasn't asleep yet. I wasn't ready. They laughed and said they were done. Another time I came out saying sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Almond Joy has nuts, mounds don't. No clue why I was singing this, but the nurses thought I was hilarious and let family know this happened. Not anesthesia but post-op in ICU. PT had brain surgery for a neuroma. He had a brain drain in but otherwise was fine. Me. Hi sir. I have your dinner. Do you need help? PT. Nah. I can do it. What is it? Me. White fish. PT. Me. It's brain food. PT. If that's the case I need a whale. I laughed for 2 hours after that. It wasn't something he said. But I had a patient in his 50s attempt to motorboat his wife when she came to pick him up. She was mortified. And I managed to keep a straight face while giving her all his post-op instructions. I was briefly put under for an endoscopy. When I came to, I cried and my nurse was so sweet to me. I kept asking if I died and then thanked her for not letting me die, and she was so sweet and legit held me for a minute. Also not a nurse. But I had ankle surgery last year. They gave me animal crackers after, and I remember being really upset that I didn't realize until the last cracker that I forgot to look at the animals and appreciate each one. Not a nurse. My wife woke up from a surgery and started pointing into the middle of the room and in a soft voice said, "Fuck you. Fuck you and you. What's that smell?" She then looked over at me and says, "When did you get here, ya asshat?" Lol, she doesn't cuss much. So I got a good laugh out of it. Backstory. My grandmother desperately needed a hip replacement. She didn't want the surgery. But it had reached the point where my grandfather couldn't care for her unless she got it, and had to give her the ultimatum to either have the surgery or move into assisted living, something she absolutely did not want. She had some onset of dementia. So everyone was extremely worried about what the anesthesia would do to her mental condition. After surgery, they were asking her questions to see if the anesthesia had affected her cognitive functions. My grandfather asked, "Do you know who I am?" And her response was, "You're the dirty rotten little so-and-so who did this to me." As she pointed at her leg. Oh. She had also named both her stuffed cat and her cane George. Anyone else she didn't immediately recognize by name while the anesthesia wore off was also dubbed George. There is nobody in our family named George. Kinda long. Sorry. I worked in an ER and we had a patient. Guy about 18 to 20 years old. Who had a spontaneous pneumothorax. Collapsed lung. Not quite as bad as it sounds. He basically had a small area of air between his lung and chest wall. We had to put in a small chest tube to remove the air. We did a moderate sedation. Basically kinda knock him out but not put him completely under. One of the meds used was Versed, which has an amnesic effect. So they don't remember anything. Procedure is done and I'm monitoring him when he starts coming around. He looks at me and asks, "So, when are we going to do this thing?" I said, "We're already done. Look at your chest. Had a drain dressing in place." He looks down. Then looks at me and says, "Dude. How'd you do that?" Maybe not the best story here. But it happened 20 plus years ago and it still makes me laugh. I came out of it in the middle of a conversation with Gandalf. I was trying to sell him Tupperware. When my brother got home after his wisdom teeth, he was on the couch in the TV room laughing, and when we asked what he was laughing, he said that this was the funniest show ever. The TV wasn't on. Patient here with a great story nonetheless. When I got my wisdom teeth removed, I apparently had a religious experience. I'm agnostic. I told my mom, who was with me, that I saw people walking on water. Next, I kept telling her that I saw Jesus. Apparently, when the female nurse came back into the room, I did the Catholic sign of the cross and whispered to my mom, "That's him. That's Jesus." The nurse lost her shit. So I am a nurse, but my favorite coming out of anesthesia story was my husband's. I went back to see him in recovery and he was super eager to leave and was trying to remember where he parked, and I said, "Don't worry babe, I'll bring the car around. You know where the car is?" "I do. I drove us here." "You drove us here? Oh my god, you drove us here? Thank you. You're welcome. I was happy to do it." "Oh my god, you drove us here. Oh wow." He was close to tears at this point. I took him to lunch after and he nodded off while staring intently at a novelty salt shaker. My favorite while I was working was a man who woke up from a double great toe amputation and was super worked up about how he was going to wear flip-flops until I suggested he try out slides instead. Not a nurse. But my twin sister started speaking fluent Spanish to my mom after she woke up from getting her wisdom teeth removed. We're half Puerto Rican, on our mom's side. so we've grown up hearing Spanish. But neither of us had ever carried a fluent conversation with her in it. But apparently my doped-up sister could. Patient here. Went on a long rant about how Bugs Bunny appeared in my dreams and told me lies. No idea how my brain came up with that one.